You are standing amidst the freezing mist, shrouding the remote island of Jura in the winter of 1948. The sound of waves crashing against the cliffs blends with the wind howling through the wooden crevices of the old Barnhill house, creating a melody of profound sadness and solitude. The smell of smoldering coal is not enough to dispel the bone-chilling cold seeping into every fiber of your being. You feel your breath condensing into pale white clouds in the dim darkness of this cramped and silent study. In the corner of the room, you witness a gaunt figure hunched over an old typewriter. George Orwell's bony fingers strike the keys slowly but resolutely, as if he is pouring his last remaining strength into every character. Suddenly, a violent cough erupts from deep within his chest, shaking his entire frail frame. A painful wheeze echoes through the stillness, making you feel a tightening in your own chest out of sheer pity for his condition. You see him hurriedly press a handkerchief to his mouth to stifle the cough, yet a bright red stain still bloats upon the white fabric. It is the grim mark of tuberculosis, which is gnawing away at the life of this talented and resilient artist day by day. Some scholars still debate whether it was the brutal cold and the solitude of Jura that molded the dark colors permeating Winston Smith's world. Historical records confirm that he lived on this desolate island from 1946 to 1949. According to various sources, Orwell considered the completion of 1984 his ultimate mission before death came knocking at his door. He worked continuously for over 10 hours a day, ignoring all medical advice regarding the need for rest and intensive treatment. A surprising detail is that because Barnhill was so remote, no secretary agreed to come and help. This forced a dying man to personally retype the entire massive manuscript while in a state of total physical and mental exhaustion. You stand silently, observing the words, "Big Brother is watching you," emerge under the light of an oil lamp. The weight of those words seems to be forged from Orwell's own pain and fading breath, creating a powerful indictment of humanity. Physical agony is etched onto his haggard face, yet within his deep-set eyes burns a fierce fire of will. You want to reach out and protect him, but you can only bear silent witness as the artist completes his masterpiece amidst the cold night. Hello everyone. Tonight we explore the life of George Orwell. His life, a somber yet proud symphony of honesty in a world teeming with sweet lies. Imagine yourself curled up in a warm wool blanket, listening to the wind whistling through the wooden crevices of an ancient house, where the breath of time stands still in the peaceful darkness. If we had been born in his time, perhaps we would not have been able to do what he did. For while he made a profound impact on history with his pen, we might still be wandering. So, before you drift off to sleep, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. This truly means a great deal to my channel. I really want to know where you are listening to this story from. Whether you are in Los Angeles at 10 p.m. or Tokyo in the middle of the night, please share that in the comments so we can connect. Now, turn off the lights. Perhaps turn on a box fan or Marpac dome for some gentle background white noise, and let us begin our journey tonight. Let your mind drift freely back into the past. You are standing in the land of Motihari, Bengal, on a sweltering afternoon in 1903. The surrounding air is thick, carrying the pungent, distinctive scent of raw opium, the commodity managed by his father, Richard Blair. You see a newborn infant named Eric Arthur Blair, who would later choose the name George Orwell. The baby lies in his cradle, completely unaware of the stormy fate and the burden of truth that await him. Some scholars still debate whether this early association with an imperial agency like the Opium Department shaped his critical view of power. This is a surprising detail in his background. Time passes, and you find yourself alongside Eric's mother, crossing the ocean to return to the peaceful Henley-on-Thames. Lush green meadows and a tranquil river replace the harsh sun of distant Bengal. You stroll with Eric along the banks of the River Thames, where the young boy begins to reveal a deep love for nature. He observes the fish swimming beneath the water with the boundless curiosity of a sensitive soul. The contrast between middle-class elegance and the loneliness of a child whose father remains in India begins to permeate his soul. You can sense a faint sadness in Eric's eyes. Life at Henley provides the first lessons on class boundaries. Eric realizes he belongs to a group he would later call the lower upper middle class, where appearances are always prioritized over inner reality. The short-lived freedom by the Thames fades as Eric enters the gates of a boarding school, where innocence is stifled by cold authority. Prepare yourself alongside him to face the lashes and the cruel class discrimination waiting behind those red brick doors. You find yourself standing under the leaden skies of Eastbourne, where St. Cyprian's boarding school looms like a cold and threatening red brick fortress. The pungent scent of boiled cabbage mingles with the musty aroma from the kitchen, creeping into the dormitories and causing Eric's chest to tighten in a dry cough. You see 8-year-old Eric huddled on a small iron bed, his eyes wide with fear in the terrifying silence of the winter night. He is a scholarship student, a presence regarded as a cheap parasite in the eyes of those who run this exorbitantly expensive private school. Some scholars still debate whether the cruel discrimination he faced here planted the seeds for his profound hatred of all forms of oppression. When Eric accidentally soils his bed sheets due to a bedwetting incident, you stand frozen, witnessing him being dragged away to receive painful lashes from the headmaster. The swish of the rattan cane tears through the still air, leaving bright red welts and a sense of utter humiliation on his thin, trembling body. You want to reach out and protect that child, but your hand only passes through the air like a ghost from the future, looking back helplessly at the past. The surprising truth is that despite being treated poorly, Eric always remained at the top of his class, a heartbreaking paradox between his brilliant intellectual talent and his low social standing. He gradually realizes that power does not require fairness. It only needs absolute obedience and fear to maintain its own order. You see Eric sitting quietly in a dark corner of the library, his thin fingers stroking the pages of old books as his only way to escape this harsh reality. A sense of loneliness seeps deep into his every fiber, turning the world around him into a ruthless chessboard where he is merely a forgotten pawn. You feel the cold from the stone walls soaking through your clothes, much like the coldness of the upper class surrounding the sensitive soul of the child. All of Eric's efforts to be like them fail, for he understands that he will forever be an outsider in the lavish play of wealth. The early lessons of betrayal and mental manipulation here gradually formed a hard protective shell for his sensitive soul. The humiliation at school forged a gritty spirit, but now fate leads Eric to a completely different extreme. Leaving England behind, you will accompany him to the distant land of Burma, where the once bullied schoolboy suddenly becomes an enforcer of imperial power. Some scholars still debate that those years in Burma taught him not only about imperial brutality, but also about the cowardice of those in power themselves. You find yourself standing next to Eric Blair under the scorching sun of Mole Mine, where sweat pours down your forehead and soaks through the thick khaki police uniform. The air around you is thick with the smell of mud, the aroma of tropical markets filled with spices, and the pungent scent of elephants agitated in their must. You feel the weight of the rifle in Eric's hands, a weight that comes not just from the metal, but from the expectations of an entire empire pressing down upon his shoulders. Before you stands a giant elephant grazing peacefully. It had just caused a fatal accident, but now it looks gentle and appears entirely unthreatening. A crowd of thousands of local people surrounds you, their eyes fixed on Eric, waiting for a decisive action from the representative of colonial power standing there. You see Eric's hands shake slightly as he realizes he does not want to kill this animal, yet the fear of being laughed at by the crowd forces him to pull the trigger. The gunshot resonates, tearing through the quiet afternoon air, a piercing sound that startles you and sends a cold shiver down your spine. A surprising fact is that during his time here, Eric tattooed small blue circles onto his knuckles, a peculiar act aimed at blending in with the local culture. The elephant collapses slowly, its gasping breath sounding like a choked sob, exposing the futility of violence and the agony of the oppressed. You stand there, feeling the utter humiliation rising within Eric, as he understands he is merely a hollow puppet performing for the crowd. Official historical records confirm that Eric served in the ranks of the Indian Imperial Police in Burma for 5 years, from 1922 until the tumultuous year of 1927. Memories of the rattan cane at St. Mater Weckeds. Cyprian's, which you witnessed, seem to echo in this gunshot, reminding him of the cruelty of all power systems. You want to whisper in his ear that this truth will soon become his sharpest weapon. But at this moment, Eric only sees a boundless void and a shattered self-esteem. The jungle rain begins to fall, each cold drop soaking through his shirt, washing away the road dust but unable to erase the psychological scar forming in the young man's soul. The gunshot that felled the elephant still echoes as a reminder of the Empire's pointlessness, urging Eric to cast everything aside to find his true self. Join him as he descends the dark stairs of the slums, where he chooses to live as a pauper to cleanse himself of his police past. Some scholars still debate that Eric's act of voluntarily immersing himself in poverty was not merely to gather material, but a spiritual effort to cleanse his past. You stand before a squalid lodging house in Paris, where the stench of trash and sewage rises thick under the stifling heat of the summer of 1928, making your chest feel heavy. You observe Eric, now a gaunt figure in tattered clothes, laboriously washing mountain-high piles of dishes in the dim kitchen of a luxury hotel. The sweltering steam blows into your face, blurring your vision, while the head chef's shouting rings out like whip cracks in the grease-filled and smoky air. You feel the stinging pain from Eric's hands, his fingers reddened from being soaked too long in dirty water, a physical torment he silently and voluntarily endures. A surprising detail from documents reveals that even while living in destitution, Eric maintained the habit of meticulously recording every habit of his fellow sufferers to enrich his life's experiences. According to official records, this period nurtured the content for his debut work titled Down and Out in Paris and London, published in 1933 under an entirely new pseudonym. As night falls, you lie with him on a rusty spring bed, listening to the sound of bedbugs crawling across the walls and the wheezing breath of lives marginalized by society. You see him trembling from gnawing hunger, but in those eyes, there is no regret, only a steely determination to fully understand the depths of pain felt by those at the bottom of society. You follow him back to London, where he disguises himself as a wanderer in worn-out clothes to infiltrate poorhouses filled with contempt, stench, and cold. The sensation of rough fabric rubbing against sensitive skin makes you shiver, but that is the price Eric is willing to pay to break down the class barriers that had long imprisoned him. You witness the moment he shares his last bit of dry bread with a stranger, a small act that shines amidst the darkness of surrounding poverty and despair. Exhaustion begins to take hold as you see Eric slumped over a makeshift writing desk, trying to transform these bitter experiences into words with the power to change reality. Amidst the musty smell of the poorhouses, a steely will has been forged to turn pain into the power of language. You will see Eric Blair gradually recede into the past, giving way to a new identity, beginning the journey to conquer the literary world with the naked truth. You find yourself sitting in a narrow room in Southwold, where the flickering oil lamp casts long shadows onto the thick stacks of manuscripts on the old wooden table. The smell of cheap tobacco lingers in the cold coastal air, blending with the steady rhythmic clicking of the typewriter like the heartbeat of a dreamer. Eric Blair is sitting there, his thin shoulders hunched beneath a frayed sweater, his haggard face clearly showing the exhaustion after long years of struggling at the bottom of society. You sense the hesitation in his eyes as he looks at the manuscript of Down and Out in Paris and London, a work that records the humiliation of the life of a plongeur. Some scholars still debate that choosing a pseudonym was not only to protect his family, but also a way for him to break away from his colonial past. Official historical records confirm that his debut work was published in 1933, marking the birth of a gritty new voice. A surprising detail is that Eric once considered unfamiliar names such as Kenneth Miles or P.S. Burton before deciding on the final identity for his career. You see his finger pause at the name George Orwell, a combination of the patron saint of England and the gentle river flowing through the land of Suffolk. The name George carries a resilient traditional resonance, while Orwell evokes the peaceful beauty of the river he had loved since his youth. You want to touch his shoulder in encouragement, but the separation of reality means you can only watch him silently sign the paper with determination. From this moment on, Eric Blair recedes into the shadows to make way for George Orwell, the man who would use his pen as a weapon against the injustices of the era. This change was not just a name, but a total ideological transformation, turning a former policeman into a defender of the truth. The sensation of the rough paper beneath his fingers seems to transfer to you a sacred handover of a soul that has just found its purpose in life. You look out the window, where darkness envelops the small town, and realize that the world is about to receive an exceptionally devoted observer. Financial anxieties remain, yet in Orwell's eyes at this moment, you see a small flame beginning to burn fiercely amidst the quiet night. This new beginning carries hope, but also signals harsher trials awaiting him on the path to seeking justice for humanity. The name George Orwell begins to establish its position in the literary world, but for him, observing life from a distance seems insufficient. Join him as he packs his bags to depart for Spain, where the pen will temporarily give way to the gun in the battle to defend the ideals of freedom. You stand in the middle of a Barcelona square at the end of 1936, where the air burns with revolutionary songs and crimson flags fluttering in the autumn wind. The scent of gunpowder mingles with the sweat of workers, creating a rapturous chaos of newly blossomed hope for freedom. You see Orwell in a rough and oversized military uniform, smiling with conviction as he decides to take up a gun instead of merely using his pen to observe. Some scholars still debate that his decision to join the POUM was a coincidence of fate, yet it shaped his entire future political worldview. You move with him to the Aragon front, where muddy trenches and the bone-chilling cold of the mountain nights numb the thin fingers of the soldier. The sound of rats scurrying over sandbags and the musty smell of earth and stone surround you, making you feel the naked harshness of an unequal war. A surprising detail from historical records reveals that Orwell was exceptionally tall, reaching 1.90 meters, making him a dangerously exposed target in the shallow trenches. On a foggy morning in 1937, you stand frozen as you see Orwell rise above the fortification, and a sniper's bullet tears through the silent air. The bullet pierces his neck with a sharp, cold sound. You feel a stinging pain and the metallic taste of blood flooding your own mouth in empathy. Orwell falls slowly, the world around him beginning to blur, leaving only the sound of wind whistling through the open wound and a sensation of paralysis spreading through his gaunt limbs. You want to scream for help, but your voice vanishes into the sound of gunfire, leaving the image of the artist near death, alone within the earth. According to official records, this wound missed his aorta by only a few millimeters, a miraculous stroke of luck that preserved the life of the most important voice of the 20th century. However, the physical pain is nothing compared to the betrayal he feels upon discovering that his communist allies are hunting down and purging his friends. You flee with him through the dark alleys of Barcelona, feeling the fear from the scrutinizing eyes of those who were once brothers on the same front line. The collapse of ideals in Orwell's soul when faced with the brutal reality of totalitarianism is a profound crack that no medicine can heal. The scar on his neck and the betrayal of his allies left deep aftershocks in Orwell's soul as he departed the fiery battlefield. Returning to London amidst the war, you will enter the bunkers of the BBC with him to face a new kind of weapon, even more terrifying than stray bullets: propaganda. You find yourself standing amidst the streets of London on a night in 1941, under the dim light of strict curfew orders. The smell of smoke and dust from recently bombed buildings mingles with the cold autumn mist seeping into your every breath. Some scholars still debate that the period spent working at the BBC was the most direct catalyst in helping him form the haunting concept of the Ministry of Truth in his later masterpiece. You walk with Orwell into the massive broadcasting house, where long, stretching corridors are always filled with the smell of tobacco and the dry sound of typewriters, echoing like machine gun fire from afar. According to official historical records, Orwell took on the role of program producer for the BBC's Eastern Service, with the mission of transmitting information to the Indian subcontinent during the war years. You sit beside him in cramped recording studios, witnessing him struggle with strictly censored manuscripts, where naked truths are distorted to serve war objectives. You feel the fatigue etched deep into his haggard face as he realizes he is participating in the very propaganda machine that he inherently loathes and utterly despises. A surprising detail is that the terrifying Room 101 in the novel 1984 was actually inspired by a real office at the BBC, where Orwell had to endure many meaningless meetings. The static of an old radio reminds you of childhood evenings, when the outside world seemed to shrink through flickering sounds. But for Orwell, it was a battlefield of words. You observe his thin hands trembling as they turn the pages of documents. Your heart tightens as you see him trying to preserve linguistic accuracy amidst an ocean of sweet lies. He feels like a caterpillar, trapped in the cocoon of bureaucracy, consuming precious energy on what he calls a waste of public time and money. Faint light from the desk lamp casts long shadows on the wall, turning the image of Orwell into a solitary wanderer silently accumulating bitter experiences to prepare for a great rebellion with his pen. Even so, it was in the darkness of these recording rooms that he learned how power manipulates the human mind through total control over the flow of information and historical truth. You want to whisper that these quiet efforts will not be in vain, but he simply turns off the light, leaving a still void to envelop the profound loneliness of a lucid mind. The experiences of molding information at the BBC helped Orwell deeply understand how power can corrupt the most noble ideals. Join him as he quietly leaves the smoke-filled office to return to the pages written about an animal farm where a revolution is silently beginning. You are standing before a grand decision. Much like how the animals at Manor Farm are choosing their future, the scent of fresh grass mingling with the aroma of damp earth after a light rain strangely calms your mind. You see Orwell sitting quietly on the porch. On his lap is a stack of unfinished papers about a strange rebellion. You feel the intense concentration emanating from his gaunt figure, his hands trembling slightly. According to official historical documents, Animal Farm was completed by Orwell in 1944, while the world was still submerged in the flames of war. This is a sharp indictment in the form of a poignant allegory. A surprising fact is that this work was rejected by at least 4 major publishers due to fears of political sensitivities. They did not want to offend the Soviet Union, Britain's most important ally in that war. Some scholars still debate that the resistance from publishers at that time further spurred Orwell's will. He believed that liberty is the right to tell people what they do not want to hear or accept. You enter the world of Animal Farm with him, where the wind whistles through the blades of the windmill. You hear the heavy hoofbeats of Boxer, the loyal horse who is exhausting his last remaining strength. Your heart tightens upon seeing the sorrowful look in Orwell's eyes as he writes the scene of Boxer being taken to the slaughterhouse. He painfully realizes that in every totalitarian system, devotion is often repaid with betrayal. Do you remember the suffocating feeling in the BBC studios with the strictly censored manuscripts? Those very experiences provided the vital essence for the pig characters who are carrying out acts of manipulation. You hear squealers skillfully explaining that the pig's monopolization of milk and apples is a scientific necessity. The linguistic treachery makes you shiver with cold. Even though the afternoon sun is still shining brightly, Orwell used the imagery of animals to retell the story of the Russian Revolution and the rise of Stalin. He wanted the world to see how the most beautiful dream can turn into a nightmare. Each line of text pouring from his pen serves as a belated but essential warning to all of humanity. You stand there, feeling his breath grow heavier as his tuberculosis begins to relapse aggressively. The sallow twilight stretches across the written pages, turning the black lines of text into the scars of history. Orwell silently folds the manuscript, his eyes gazing far toward the horizon filled with gray clouds. As the animals on the farm gradually lose their freedom, Orwell also notices his health depleting amidst the hustle and bustle of London. You will accompany him on a final journey to the remote island of Jura, where he wishes to trade his fading breaths for the most powerful indictment of humanity. You are sitting on a small boat, crossing the rough sea to reach the island of Jura. Salty sprays hit your face, directly freezing and pungent as the island emerges hazily through the mist. You find yourself standing before Barnhill, a primitive house amidst the desolate wilderness. The sea wind howls through the door crevices, carrying the Atlantic dampness that seeps deep into your every fiber in the darkness. Inside the dark room, Orwell appears like a gaunt ghost beside an old typewriter. The steady clicking rings out, sounding like a countdown of time amidst the terrifying stillness of the night. A sudden violent cough strikes, shaking his frail frame. You see him hurriedly use a white handkerchief to soak up the blood, the brilliant red hue appearing hauntingly under the light of the oil lamp. Some scholars still debate that the suffocating atmosphere in the masterpiece 1984 is a true reflection of the physical pain he was enduring during these final, harsh days. According to official records, Orwell chose solitude on Jura to complete his final indictment. He wanted to dedicate his last remaining breaths to leave a powerful warning for all of humanity. A surprising detail is that Orwell nearly drowned during an outing with his son. They were caught in the notorious Corrie Wrecken whirlpool, an incident that almost caused the manuscript of 1984 to be buried forever. You witness him struggling to retype the entire massive manuscript himself. Not a single secretary agreed to come to this remote island to assist a man as gravely ill as he was. Each key becomes as heavy as lead under his bony fingers. You want to reach out and help him type so he can rest, but you know you are only a guest of time. Concepts like Big Brother or thought crime gradually emerge on the white paper. Every line written seems to be traded for the very life and depleting strength of the writer. You feel the cold of the Scottish winter enveloping the small room. The solitude here is absolute, in complete contrast to the brilliant glory the work is about to bring to the world. Orwell looks out the window, where the gray sea is roaring out there in the storm. In those eyes, you see a profound sadness as he knows he will not live to see the world's change. The final manuscript is completed in exhaustion, but the fire in Orwell's eyes seems to have faded along with the last warmth of the Jura winter. Join me in entering the quiet hospital room in London, where the soldier is preparing to perform the greatest handover of his life to history. Some scholars still debate that his sudden departure at the peak of his career was one of the greatest losses to world literature. You are standing in hospital room number 65 at University College Hospital, London, where the air is thick with the smell of antiseptic and the silence of destiny. Pale daylight filters through the window, casting long shadows across the haggard face of Eric Blair, the man whom the entire world is about to call George Orwell. You see him lying there, fragile as a withered leaf, yet his eyes still retain a sharp gaze, piercing through the mists of time. According to official historical records, he passed away on the 21st of January 1950 at only 46 years old as a result of a severe lung hemorrhage. The tuberculosis that had pursued him since childhood now delivered its final blow, taking the breath of the soldier. You sense a faint metallic taste in the air, a detail reminding you of the fiery battles and the days of hardship he had endured. Orwell did not complain. He faced his final hours with an astonishing calmness, deeply resilient and full of pride. A surprising detail from various sources reveals that, just a few days before his passing, he and Sonia Brownell had prepared everything to travel to a remote sanatorium in Switzerland. Hope for a new beginning still flickered in his soul, a testament to the intense vitality of a man who never surrendered. You see on the small wooden table beside the hospital bed, newspapers reporting the resounding success of 1,984 across the world and in America. His legacy began to spread like a powerful wave, causing great powers to startle at his prophecies of a controlled future. You feel a deep empathy for the loneliness of an intellect ahead of its time, one who sacrificed his entire health to complete the final indictment for humanity. The hands that once typed steely words now lie limp on the pure white bedsheet, having finished the noble mission of an observer. The world outside the hospital window still flows busily under the rain, but in this room, time seems to have stopped to bid farewell to a soul. You want to say thank you for his courage, but your voice is only a sigh vanishing into the cold London winter wind. As his final breath gently departs, you see a faint smile lingering on his lips, as if he had found true freedom after all constraints. The concepts of truth and freedom he left behind will become a beacon for future generations lost in the murky darkness. His presence does not vanish. It dissolves into space and seeps into your mind, reminding you of the value of every honest word in life. You stand silently, witnessing a chapter of history close, but the power from his pen is just beginning a great new journey. Let your mind fully relax in this quiet space. The images of George Orwell's life, from the scorching days in India to the freezing nights on Jura Island, are gradually fading like old film reels. You feel the warmth of the wool blanket, the softness of your pillow, and your own steady breath guiding you into a state of profound relaxation. The lessons of honesty, courage, and the yearning for freedom that Orwell left behind have now become a part of your consciousness. You no longer feel burdened by the warnings of the future. Instead, there is a gentle lucidity, a belief in the power of the individual voice. Let your final thoughts drift away as peacefully as the river Orwell flowing toward the vast sea. All sounds from the outside world have faded away, leaving only absolute peace enveloping your room. You have completed a long journey through the ups and downs of a life filled with meaning and devotion. Now is the time for your body to sink into sleep, for your cells to recover, and for your soul to be soothed in the gentle darkness of the late night. The image of the great writer vanishes into thin air, leaving a silence filled with empathy and appreciation in your heart. You know that truth is always a revolutionary act, and your very awareness tonight is the greatest gift to his legacy. Close your eyes, let go of all worries, and embrace sleep with a serene smile on your lips. Thank you for spending these moments with me, for sharing the resonance of a life that never yielded to hardship. May you have beautiful dreams, where freedom and love always reign in the ethereal light of imagination. Good night, my companion, through the paths of history. Good night.